And gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Monday, February 24th at 11:30 a.m. Still getting used to that intro music and today's imagery. All right, fine. Maybe it's a little bit creepy, but heck, it works. AI is funny like that sometimes. We got up on the screen the DXY, while not, as we must acknowledge, being it's not the current currency pairings of all the granular currency pairings that are possible. The DXY is a general high level representation of all currencies in many regards. It's not specific, it's vague, but it works and it's meaningful. Tells us the state of the system and very specifically is the primary inspection for liquidity from a capacity to purchase standpoint, not with regard to debt refinancing, but obviously relative currency valuations impact how easy or difficult it is to refinance in, for instance, a currency that you need but don't have. But with regard to the purchase price of things, this is the most important inspection. And on a day like today, as everything's waning a little bit, I find it very interesting what we did this morning. We were down at 106.1, 106.2, with a sharp spike to 106.6. Sailor threw a clip at Bitcoin. Bitcoin back under 95, didn't move a budge. Buy a bit hack. No real significant movement in the price of Ethereum. Certainly not upward. 5% on the day as compared to Bitcoin. ETH BTC is dipping 3.6%. Net effect of both assets repricing. This chart looks like shit as always. Curve taking a dip below 47 cents. If we inspect, it's right on the line of technical failure. I would say that the 10 on the weekly, there we go out to the monthly. I find maybe the monthly is a little bit more constructive. The 10 on the monthly is still above support. Support is a position of weakness. This is a relatively weak looking chart until we have that support hold as support and start to push towards a fresh higher high. So when you have volatility like this and a big delta between a local top and local bottom, it presents a great deal of uncertainty where support expressing weakness is much less comforting as compared to if the top was 68 cents and 68 cents and we're retesting 46, 10 SMA on the weekly. But because the top was at a buck, almost 40, give or take, um, it conveys a different sentiment, different gut instinct. So this is certainly a position of weakness, to say the least. Nothing big to take away there. We all understand the volatility that plays into curve. Um, any other takeaways? Obviously, let me get you guys started on questions and comments. If you're on X or on YouTube, please feel welcome to throw anything in the chat. We need to talk about this stuff. We need to talk about what's on your mind because otherwise I'm just ranting and raving like a lunatic. We don't want that. Or maybe some folks do want that. Move back above 91.8. Obviously, it's a position of weakness. We're right on support. You can't look too much into that from a volatility indicator standpoint. This chart is such a manifestation of so many components. We know what it means when it's going down versus going up. We don't know what relative supports mean from a significant standpoint. And right now, we're not going down. If you were falling below 80, or at least below these MAs, at least the 284, we're going towards 80, and we punch 80 and we're in 75, then we could say a constructive argument. We could say, okay, this is a manifestation of liquidity conditions freeing up. And if move is below 80, you're going to start to see the DXY roll over as well. You can inspect technicals all you want on the DXY. It'll drive you nuts from the monthly perspective. I think is the most constructive. This is a very promising topping pattern. It's only been 3 months creating this topping pattern. What you want to see is lower lows and lower highs. And that is really what the chart indicates. We should expect lower lows and lower highs over the coming months. And that what else kind of takeaway do you really need? You have alignment of all narratives indicating dollar down. Um, you have alignment of bond volatility coming down vis-a-vis Treasury issuance. The where they're issuing on the yield curve, they're going to manipulate or accommodate to the best of possibility, uh, basically the suppression of volatility, which basically translates to them um, issuing at an interest rate that the market can handle, or rather a duration that the market can handle. The market has a capacity to absorb, which will affect relative volatility. So that might not be their intent to suppress volatility, but that sure as hell going to be the implication of their policy that they need to execute to actually sell the shit that they're going to be selling this year. So you got to understand whether they get deficit under control or not, where they significantly reduce um, obligations with regard to employment. Still have the debt servicing and the debt refinancing. It's up to $10 trillion that needs to be refinanced this year, and that is completely irrespective of whatever Doge can come up with. Doesn't really mean anything in most regards, not structurally at least. Gold is at an insane valuation. I keep coming back to this chart. $2,941 is extraordinary. And we have all these narratives, all these theories spinning around. Are the British vaults? Are they dry? How much is in Fort Knox? How much gold is the U.S. Is Britain shipping over to the U.S.? All this shit will drive you nuts because you haven't stepped in Fort Knox. All we hear is third party. Same with gold shipments to and from the U.S. Um, and all we have is our glimpse into what the hell's going on in China. We do get a decent sense of their high level structural reorganization of their economy. Some historic, well, local history lows of U.S. debt holdings. Well, why? Because they needed to finance their currency stability, considering how much they've had to decrease the value of the yuan within acceptable thresholds thus far. Because the argument still remains, the narrative still remains that they need to significantly devalue. So how does that play into dollar appreciation? They devalue, that triggers dollar appreciation unless there's a geopolitical collusion that gets executed to facilitate yuan's deval without creating the obvious knock-on effect of dollar blowout to the upside. 'Cause that surely will destabilize not just China, that destabilizes everyone because everyone does business with China, everyone does business with the dollar, and if there's a currency imbalance, oh man, that would blow the dollar out to the upside, which is why you see a bunch of technical analysis on social media saying, yeah, check back when the dollar blips to 114 again and everything's falling apart. I don't speculate whether it goes up or down. I know what happens if it goes up, everything falls apart. I know what happens if it goes down. Um, Risk assets, especially assets outside the US, go parabolic for a period of time. An emerging market trade in all regards. So, therefore, what do? I just watch the damn chart. I'm like, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Because I know what happens if it goes either way. Athletic concept in the house. Hi. Raul, hello, Sir Joe, President, accounted for 133 people in the stream. If you are on X or on YouTube, throw some comments in the chat and let's see what's on your mind. Because it's Monday and it's a quiet Monday. Shadow 144, parabolic run up, 14x on the money in a short couple of days. February 4th, 20 days, we've gone close to 20x. That'd be 160 if it was 20. So what do you have? 16, 17x, give or take, depending on the fluctuation between 128 and yesterday's local top at 166. I'm looking at a 1 hour chart. Someone needs to pull the fire alarm if the captain's looking at a 1 hour chart. But what else are you to inspect on something that literally came out like a month ago? Um, there's no takeaways whatsoever from a technical perspective on a chart this new. This means nothing. This will drive you nuts. Ooh, is it cheap? Is it expensive? I am completely biased every time I talk about this asset, of which I've been talking a fair bit about it. What was yesterday's commentary? Yeah, this was a cute one. Talking about it's novel. The X token is quite novel, which is also the case, I think, for V33s with options emissions. There's no liquid market. I mean, that's really a period at the end of that sentence. If there's no liquid market for a piece of property that you receive, and all crypto is property, whether it's a primitive or a derivative, it doesn't matter. Crypto is property. There's no liquid market. It has no um, fair market value, FMV as it's called. Therefore, it's a receipt of $0 in fair market value until it's realized, and then you got 1001 IRC 1001 capital gains considerations. That's an interesting takeaway. So I'm quite fond of the design and structure of the product. It's novel in that regard, with regard to the X token tax implications, or at least immediate tax implications, specifically considering emissions and LP provisions and whatnot, and what folks are receiving. And as I said, I'm completely biased because the Ramsey's airdrop. It's just transparency there. How can I not be biased? So clearly, I like it because it just wants to go along with the entire Sonic ecosystem and print LP revenue. So great. I'm a dividend investor. It prints LP revenue, and this was gifted slash granted slash airdrop. Wasn't the Interestingly enough, the airdrop was X token. The timing of an airdrop is everything because the timing of the airdrop, if it coincides with no liquidity provisions being available, for instance, when you got when you get any airdrop, what's the fair market value? If there is no fair market value at the time of airdrop, you didn't receive anything. You received no income. There's no immediate obligation. Now, this it gets complicated, but that is a pretty clear inspection. You know, the there's a lot of documents. The IRS talks about airdrops and hard forks, like Bitcoin Cash and whatnot. That was a hot topic a couple of cycles ago. Fair market value. So as long as you could explicitly show that there was no fair market value at the time of receipt, there was no way to sell it, that is a very substantial argument, independent of what their memorandums like to talk about. We could take a look at them if we want to, unless you post some comments or questions. Otherwise, I'm going to start looking at legal shit. Uh, which one will have it? I mean, obviously, we could go here. Let's go down to the appendices. We have some nice links. Uh, memorandum. These guys. This is 2019-24. Yeah, airdrop is generally received on the date and time. So notice, you'll always notice that they talk about date and time because that is critical. That is the granular inspection of when and how something was received. Well, I'm not going to read verbatim. I've seen a couple of lawyers on YouTube recently reading through entire legal documents. Maybe best to paraphrase. Um, but fair market value holds true. They keep talking about what is the fair market value upon receipt. Anyway, I'd rather you folks ask questions rather than me digging into legal documents and digressing to no end. Arrow, interesting that Barachain has ballooned in TVL, but as far as I know, they have no VE33 DEX. Baradrome isn't VE33 correct. I was looking at it the other day. We can take a look at the documentation real quick. Well, this isn't that's as simple as that. Liquidity provided contributing liquidity. Is it a call option? Yeah. No, it's as simple as that. This is a fork of a V33 exchange comparable to like Linex, the options variant of the VE33 world. Yeah, sorry, I'm not interested. Not interested at all. It might have a large amount of volume, but it's offbeat, in my opinion. It reminds me of like sector of the market where Cosmos hubs exist or Polkadot parachains exist. It's not central to the market. Yeah, Solana was offbeat for a while, and that became central. But obviously, the L2s, ETH L2s are quite central, and they're very much suffering right about now, especially as this market's taking a dip today. So I'm not interested in exposing this far out on the risk curve, non-central to the market, because really the center of the market's Ethereum mainnet. Uh, yeah, so I generally have no interest in doing anything in this part of the crypto financial world. I mean, this reminds me of I mean, look at all the shit. It's all meme coins. And this is a bit of what Velodrome looked like for quite a period of time. But a fair amount of trading started to occur from in ETH denominated LPs and Bitcoin denominated LPs. So it became a trading venue, which is the same thing for Base. Aerodrome has a large volume of Bitcoin and Ethereum related transactions, not in Bitcoin altcoin related transactions, but dollar in the dollar's context. People are actually using it for trading purposes. This is all meme coins. The only thing I could possibly do is, boop, no interested, not interested, not interested. And maybe you guys will be bored with lost stuff. What else you guys thinking? KJV, Bitcoin catch up move once gold cools off. What's a catch up move? Look, where's it going to be at the end of the year? More importantly, how much do you own versus not own? And clearly, that's not something I think about on a daily basis. Do you own? So that's a question that folks must ask themselves every day. Do you currently own a quantity of Bitcoin that you want to own? Yes or no? I didn't say price of Bitcoin. I said what do you want to own? Do you have a quarter Bitcoin? Do you have a tenth of a Bitcoin? What is a target quantity? Do you have a target quantity? Your target quantity shouldn't be 10,000 Bitcoin unless have access to big business or have a huge amount of uh, wealth generated from something else. But you have to be reasonable with regard to expectations. So define a target quantity, either have it or pursue it. And I don't care too much about where Bitcoin heads in the short term, which is why I literally start the stream with the DXY, which tells me whether the entire market's going to go up or down and when. For instance, you see a nice drop to 105.5. You're going to see crypto prices respond accordingly. And that means today, that day, as well as that week, are going to probably be interesting. Days like today tell me, it is what it is. Been there, done that. Everything gets a little lackluster. Interest gets lost. Hype evaporates. Everyone gets the doldrums, and then they get that complacency. And they're like, oh, it's not going anywhere. It's not going to do anything. That's going to be one of those days today, as far as the macro data teaches us. Why would Bitcoin pop when gold cools off? What's the correlation there? I mean, at some point they need to monetize. When they monetize to increase currency supply. So at some point they need to increase currency supply to finance debt obligations nominally. So they also need to trigger inflation. That's another story that folks don't really want to understand. They need the tax receipts. So right now they're trying to cut expenses rather than increase receipts. But obviously, cyclically, if the equities markets rally and risk assets rally, they'll increase their receipts and be able to finance debt obligations nominally. So I don't really see too much of an interesting takeaway if gold cools off, Bitcoin rallies. No, if the dollar rolls over, Bitcoin rallies. If move rolls over, the dollar is going to roll over and Bitcoin rallies. It's all just a very simple inverse correlation to the dollar, which is why it gets complicated when you start talking about China and their economic Armageddon that has been going on for quite some time. It's the weekly DXY that's the most constructive, in my opinion, because you do have the color display from a guppy standpoint. It'll be nice to see a bull market at some point. We haven't had a bull market in the crypto space since 2021. So a couple of potential starts to a bull market in 2024, but they both failed to materialize. So thus far, 2024, there was nothing really much that was overwhelmingly structural um, at all. Got close September of last year. You fell below. If you fell below the 200 SMA on the weekly, fell towards what, 98, 97, 96, that would have been a ferocious bull market. But the macro backdrop's not there. China was literally collapsing. They need to devalue. How are they everyone going to pay their dollar denominated debts in a world where the dollar is so expensive it needs to come down, but they needed to pay their debts, so they were buying the dollar to pay their debts. So the very need to pay dollar denominated debt prevent is exactly the mechanism that prevents the dollar from depreciating. Once you understand that, you understand basically how the entire world operates, and you understand milkshake and what Brent Johnson's work says. In the end, the dollar goes straight up. What's happening with Lit Bunny? Bunny is really cool. Uniswap V4 narrative with hooks. I'm seeing the obvious lackluster response. Powerful deployment. The same day Uni V4 launched, Bunny launched as well. Airdrop the Bunny holders. They gave up on the Lit token. No traction. What's the liquidity? Not on CoinGecko. I don't know. Uh, that's the takeaway. So it's not should certainly should it be a core position. Now the question becomes exposure and position size, and is it even worth it? I don't know. What's the narrative for Uniswap V4? Given that Aerodrome has completely dominated base over Uniswap, and Velodrome has completely dominated optimism over Uniswap. I don't know what the narrative is going forward for Uniswap, and it certainly isn't an investable token. So that is a whole other very cut and dry inspection. Buddy historically was supposed to be a bootstrap, bolt on liquidity incentive system, and Buddy's very interesting also because it has the fluid component of the rehypothecation of dormant liquidity provisions. InstaDApp did very well with their fluid deployment. It's a heck of a protocol. Great tech, but y'all know what I say about great tech. So I think that is Probably where Buddy fits in. Great tech, stunning tech, lovely tech. Great tech isn't always the best investment. George, where'd you go? Hello, guys. Hello, Cap. How are you, my friend? Always a pleasure. Um, Almost none are meme coins on Baradrome. Let's go to farms. Ohm Honey. Okay. OT. Bara Yeet. W Bara. Bug. Uh, they're okay. They're not meme coins, but what the significance of the asset? What is it? What fintech vertical? Is it credit? Is it foreign exchange? Are these derivative protocols? What's the business revenues look like for the respective fintech vertical? I mean, it does have a lot of monetization. Let's take a peek. Let's take a look at what counts as data. Tables. We could talk. Mm, Thank you, DeFi Llama. Barachain. Well, okay, so it's optimism size. That's a good takeaway. All right, honey doesn't count. USDC counts. PYUSD at 142 mil. 789 mil. Why is honey showing up here? But 789 is clearly USDC versus P plus PYUSD. 789 mil. Actually, greater monetization, well, just about the same as optimism. That's actually interesting. Let's take a look at fees, volume, DEXs. See what kind of data there is. 71 mil volume, pretty microscopic. Baradrome's not even on the list, so they're doing, or maybe it's not updated. Maybe DeFi Llama is not screening the data. 44 mil a day. Balancer V2. Balancer hasn't worked out so hot. I retain it because it's base layer. But clearly, we exited the aura exposure. Take a look at it for the fun of it. Oh, thank you. Terms and conditions, great. Oh, yes, it's clearly balancer, old school balancer. Currency, BYUSD, USDCE, 52 mil WBTC, 60 mil Ethereum. And as we saw, transaction volume is not insignificant, 71 mil if we go over to optimism. So it's about optimistic in size. That's interesting. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to see more cross chain, like a Velodrome deployment over there or something using an OFT standard. I've become quite good at restraining capital deployments to a specific focus. Like I've always been able to avoid Aerodrome because it's just base, whereas Velodrome is a cross-chain deploy across the entire optimistic superchain stack. So you get free exposure. And look what the narrative has done with Ramses. They dropped to Nile, they dropped to Cleopatra, they dropped to Nuri, and then they dropped to Shadow and Sonic. Free exposure. There's nothing like free exposure. And for quite some time, I've said, this is not time to spend for myself. I'm done spending. So I find it very easy to have no interest in purchasing acquisition to a relatively new, long talked about chain, Barrett chain. It is what it is. Uh, very okay with missing out on opportunity in that regard. Same with like what, Sui? A lot of folks have been talking about that. And that's the same story. It's like, what's the VE33 over there? So, but there has to come a point where you stop chasing VE33s and you focus on core of crypto financial economics, which is mainnet. That's it. And folks go, oh, no opportunity in mainnet. And that's okay because we have all this exposure already to mainnet. And it's just a matter of time before it does what the economics of the situation says it will do. And those economics are not found by looking at non mainnet data, or rather any chain data. Those economics are found looking at macroeconomic data, particularly the dollar, which is why we do that. Any thoughts on X33 as an Arbo shadow? No interest. Um, I'm not interested in thinking in terms of derivatives, spreads, or carry trades. If there's a premium to be had, I'm not interested in that. It reminds me of looking at CRV USD, CVX CRV, or a Y CRV. No, I'm not too interested in derivatives. Now X33, fine. A fungible, portable version of Velodrome relays. That is well suited for smaller portfolios. Folks not interested in weekly cash flow and they're interested in building. Okay, X33 sounds reasonable. Um, I'm such a bias though because of the airdrop price. And also being firmly in no buy mode means, all right, what am I supposed to say? I would not buy at these prices. Very happy that other folks like to buy. Not going to complain about that. This is the most insane pending rebase I've ever seen. 120% on the rebase. Talking about over 2% return in a week. That is, these numbers for this point in the market, in the cycle, these numbers are gross. Just absolutely gross. I don't, these are numbers we saw in 2021, relatively speaking, that I recall for myself. But early in the cycle, seeing these numbers, this is outright disgusting. $5.56 million, and that obviously comes from folks selling this chart, selling X shadow into shadow, or uh, and then dumping the shadow to drive down the price. But you first have to sell your X shadow. Now that's the kicker in the design, that all emissions are X shadow. There's no shadow emission, so the most you could ever sell from any emission is 50%. So if you sell your X shadow, you're only getting 50% of that in shadow denomination, which then you could sell obviously in the open market. So quite fond of the design. I've said on X that just you let it grow, you let it compound, and if you want to do that in X33 format, I think that makes sense. Same rules apply. Make sure proper position size, never shoot over the skis, never oversize the position, especially with something so new and something that is so appreciated. Like, I'm sure there's folks that are listening to this now. Should I buy it? Is Captain advocating buying? I would never, ever, 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 ever buy at these prices. Looking at a chart like this, in my current state of mind, I could never justify it. Someone bought at $8. This is like looking at Aerodrome when it went parabolic, and this is what happened here. It went completely parabolic. Except this chart's only at 29 mil market cap, whereas Aerodrome's sitting at a couple hundred mil, like 500 mil right about now. $563 million. So Aerodrome is literally another 12, 13x this. So that means 12, 13x on this, folks sitting on a 15x. You're talking about 300x return. Run, it runs a 10x from here. I just the risk reward isn't there. I would never buy something like this. But 239 people listening to me, you are a tiny percent of the population, a much appreciated percent of the population, given how rational you are, which means the vast majority of people will never hear these words and they will engage with markets irrationally. In conclusion, John, of everything that's going on right now, clearly the entire portfolio is productive. I'm content with all the revenue. Here's my revenues tab, the flows. Ramses, Nile, Clio, Shadow, not really Sonic. This doesn't pay much, but I keep up with it. Velodrome, Curve, Thana, Curve vis-a-vis Volt Market, because Curve also pays base V Curve with a large enough position. Hidden Hand, that pays Balancer. So Balancer basically recycles fees into Hidden Hand, and that works very nicely. Not talked about, but it's base layer, so I'm content with it. Obviously, Contango we've talked about. Sonos, let's see what happens. I'm curious what happens with these boys. I have very minimal exposure. Back in the day, back in 2020, it was Plasm. Plasm turned into Astar, and Astar's reworking their stuff into Sonium. So I don't know. It's like I don't even know how much this is worth. You go over to TF staking dashboard. No, I don't want the dashboard. I want staking. Can I see how much I have? Assets. Yes, it's literally worth like 2,800 bucks. Okay. I always thought it was a cute project. Has gone nowhere in 5 years, but that's besides the point. So, but I keep the tab up because they're doing so much reworking. Sometimes you have to restake. What is the native layer going to be as compared to their EVM implementation on Sonium? So I have no idea. That's something I keep an eye on. And that's it. That's the cash flow. And that's really the distilled inspection of the entire crypto space of what's remotely interesting. That's it from the captain's perspective. How do you come up with a target quantity of Bitcoin? Obviously, it's always subjective. One, two, needs to be a particular quantity. Okay, so as you said, how do you come up with that quantity? But it needs to be a quantity. It can't just be more. Can't just be. I mean, technically, it can from like a DCA perspective, but those are incremental additions. Like that always makes sense. If you make 2 grand a week and you can throw 50 bucks, 100 bucks into Bitcoin on a weekly basis, all right, it's kind of much more interesting than a 401k. Turn off the 401k from the employer. I don't care whether it's a match or not. 3% on a match, 6% on a match, 30% CAGR on Bitcoin. All right, do you see some Bitcoin? I don't though. That's because I don't need to. I've achieved a target quantity, and it's not an exorbitant target quantity, but like one, maybe one, and yeah, one on chain, one in a brokerage account, a little bit in cold storage. That's about it. Not too much. Yeah, this was relatively inexpensive a couple of years back. 2020, Bitcoin was 4 grand. Can you believe that? Bitcoin was $4,000 in 2020. Wild to think about that. Strange. Strange the way things have played out. But to me, that's a decent number. Why? It's a whole number. I'm getting deep here. I'm getting very technical. Why is one Bitcoin an interesting number? It's a whole number. That's a good target. Clearly, it's quite trivial from an economic standpoint, but you know, it's a set value. It's reasonable because I've been doing this a long time and one is reasonable and I don't want more because I prefer cash flow over total net worth inspection, so I don't need any more. I've already met my expectations and what I think Bitcoin will do for me. So my primary opinion for owning Bitcoin is just that. Yes, I own Bitcoin. How much? Not much. Not much at all in the grand scheme of things. But it's not zero, and it's a whole number. Clearly, it gets more complicated if you're old school from like 13, 14. Folks sitting on 50, 100 Bitcoin. It was not much back then. It was two, three, four, $5,000 back in 13, 14. It's worth a lot more nowadays. And they're much more biased, and they're typically called Bitcoin maximalists, but that's understandably the case. From their perspective, they have nothing they need to do. Just let Bitcoin double in price and their 20 mil turns into 40 mil. The equation is completely different depending on when you got in and how much total net worth is available. Sometimes a 2x in the portfolio is an insane amount of wealth. So they're biased. I have my biases. The first path to success is not total net worth terms. It's you got to understand your biases. You got to talk about them so you could digest them and see if your biases are reasonable or not. I tend to think my biases are reasonable, albeit not very constructive from a conversation standpoint. My bias clearly says I don't need to buy this. I don't want to buy at this price. Therefore, I will not buy at this price. So that's clearly useless from the perspective of folks looking to me for advice on purchasing. But then again, who would ask me about advice on purchasing or not? Nobody. I'm useless in that regard. So the inspection here really can only be talked about in terms of how insane this number is. I don't even have words for how insane this is. There's nothing else in the entire crypto space like this right now. What's going on Sonic, and particularly Shadow. But everyone needs to process that and process the fact that this chart has an inherent amount of risk. There's a tremendous amount of X tokens that are available to pre-sale and other distribution targets, including seed round. The, the team, I don't think the team's going to uh, ruin the party on themselves. Probably, this is right now the best production of the kingdom. Albeit it's not even part of the kingdom, but it's a manifestation of the kingdom team. But this is the epitome of kingdom tech. So I don't see them having put in 4 years, 3 to 4 years worth of work post solidly V1 squander that. So that's a way to assess relative risk. This is a sophisticated technological production, and it has been working flawlessly, to say the least. There's absolutely no reason this chart will not go down, significantly down. There is also absolutely no reason equally that this chart will not go up, significantly up. So here's the captain's price targets. It's either going to go this way or it's going to go this way. See, I told you the captain is useless with regard to price targets. It's one or the other. So that's a binary inspection. And frankly, this should help. This is the key to understanding the way I'm sitting here all cool, calm, and collected. Either it goes down or up from here. I don't give a shit whether it's 6 months or a year from now. I care about whether it goes down or up. If it goes up, I want to own it. If it goes down, I want it to own it because it may go up. So how do you accommodate for what happens if it goes down? Position size. That's it. If it goes down, you hopefully you didn't buy too much. If it goes up, you're gonna sure as hell wish you bought more. So somewhere in between is a position size. It's like, all right, if it goes down, I have an entire portfolio that balances everything out. I expect it to take losses on plenty of things, and you're prepared. I can't tell you how many things I've taken losses on. I mean, look, Oro was a disaster. Maybe that was just wrong purchase time. I don't know. I've had a lot of failures in purchases, a lot of bankruptcy, so to speak. That's part of the equation. And that's why you have reasonable position sizes and reasonable expectations. And why I've talked about concepts like 1% to 10% changes everything. In this instance, with an air job, 0% to 10% changes everything. I think this is like 10%. It's over 10% of the damn portfolio at this point. The amount of appreciation in this thing is just mind boggling. I'll be very curious to see if it goes up or down. Let's talk shadow, please. Would you love to learn more? What's your thought process regarding your position? I hope my conversation over the last minutes is helpful. It will either go up or down in price, which is folks will be obsessed on social media with, oh, if it goes down, I gotta get out and save my bag or save whatever's left. It's because folks don't have portfolios. Folks have they buy one thing and that's the everything. And that's the YOLO mentality. That's the gambling mentality. You have 5 grand, you have $1,000. You have an outsized core position, you have an oversized secondary position, and then you have appropriately sized positions downstream. Increased risk profile, 1% to 10% changes everything type thoughts. 1% of $1,000 isn't too much. It's $10. But 1% of $10,000, okay, $100 turns into $1,000. That changes everything. So it's all relative. Now spin the clock forward over 3 cycles, about 10 years. You're in your 20s. You're going to be sitting back and be pretty good in your 30s as you build more and more of a portfolio, more and more resiliency, more and more cash flow using the recurring revenue streams over a 10-year period. So many folks want short term gains instead of focusing on survival. So please, everyone, focus on survival because all you have to do is survive in these markets, and these markets will serve folks well. Are you worried about the emission supply structure? I'm worried about the initial um, distribution to a degree, but I don't care about the price. It was a free position, so I have nothing to lose. Thus, the preface to anything I could say is that's the ultimate bias. Otherwise, I have a decreased risk profile attributed to the team of any team in these crypto markets understands the value of cash flow. They will, therefore, they warrant uh, a reduced risk consideration. Investors, pre-sale, seed round. I have a feeling a lot sold. Those are some nice dips from the top, 200 to 120, almost 220, almost a 50%, it's like a 40% drop in price. So that's a big liquidation. So if you were up at 40, 50 mil market cap, and now you're down to 30, someone cranked out a couple of mil in profits. So someone easily turned a pre-sale of 100 grand into, 10x that, 2 mil, 20x that. So there was some big profit taking. Um, so that is always something to be considered. But then again, they're profit taking on X token, which basically results in this just goes up. I can't believe it's at 120% right now, which means either. So what's the risk to myself as an X token depositor? Um, no, it's not a risk. It's where's it heading? Either here, X token depositors sell, in which case they are reallocating their X token 50% of it to me, or the LPs are obviously selling X tokens, so we get that distribution. So if anything, I'm either maintaining my current relative X token ownership, probably like 0.1213% of supply, or it's increasing. If anyone above me, which is the majority, I'm only 0.13% of supply, if they're exiting their X token exposure. So that means their sale is getting redistributed to me. So the logic is for myself, just let weeks go by and I will own more and more and more X tokens, which means I own more and more and more of the protocol's cash flow, which is exactly what I want. So this is a better rebase mechanic um, than traditional solidly. I wish there was a lock. I'm not fond of not locked. So that is definitely a shortcoming in my opinion. Albeit if there was a lock, then you wouldn't, what's the point of the X token sales? Everyone's locked. You mean those folks aren't selling. So I mean, that would be a different mechanic. Whether that's better or not, I don't know. Because this is what is, and we'll get to see what this does. Whereas we could speculate, only speculate on if this X token design had a lock mechanic, because it doesn't. So in that regard, I'm looking forward to Wednesday. I mean, what the hell is this? Where's Arrow? Arrow, you on? What the hell? What the hell is this, dude? What the hell is that? Is that what is that? That there's no words for something like that at this point in the market, because that has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with the price of shadow. That's literally people speculating on Sonic and the value of Sonic. That is just such a gross. I don't. It's just no words at this point for something like that. Hope that helps, George. A lot of rambling in there. John, also cap as a program yourself. Any thoughts on the new launch of Codex last week? Yeah, Beavis wants to show me what he's working on. I just don't have time. I have to respond to him. That reminds me. Um, I have my own software that I'm working on for my own company, not my company, but the company I work for. So I have my own responsibilities. Like, it is what it is. Great tech. I've said that for quite some time that Codex is quite interesting technology. Um, I have to stop it there. Great tech isn't always the greatest investment, and I don't have the capacity to digest all the great tech there is what it is. Patty joining late. Thoughts on North Korea now holding 0.5% of all e-supply. Uh, well, they're not going to be able to sell it as explicitly as many folks may think. I just we'll see what plays out. I mean, clearly we're seeing fear spread in the market with Ethereum down 5% versus Bitcoin down 1.36%. So I was talking to Arrow last night. There's nothing else. So it's irrelevant. Everything is noise. Everyone runs around like thinking where the market's going to head, what the market's going to do. Rather, the last thing I think about is the crypto market to understand the crypto market, or the crypto market to understand investing. It's a very simple reason why that's the case, because if you're thinking about the crypto market in terms of investing in the crypto market, you're thinking in a bubble. What matters is you're investing in the crypto market. Why are you not investing in other things? And to me, that answer is so obvious because everything else is stupid. Literally, the stock market is literally meme coins. That's all it is. They might as well be Solana meme coins. So I just I invest in the crypto market because I've invalidated everything else. And that's what gives me such great comfort because if I've invalidated everything else and the crypto market is the only thing that is even possible, even remotely possible to achieve our expectations. And to top it all off, this confluence saying, all right, every macro folk out there is like, oh, crypto is going to run as liquidity runs. And we understand the correlation, rather the inverse correlation to the dollar. We understand literally the entire US government is behind crypto now. And then the creme de la creme, the cherry on top, is these are businesses. So not only have we invalidated everything else as investable, or rather uninvestable, we've, we've confirmed that everything else is uninvestable. You've also identified reasons why these crypto markets are extraordinary businesses. These crypto markets contain extraordinary fintech businesses. Avi's a bank. Aave is the 50th largest bank in the United States. That's weird. So I don't care much about the narrative of North Korea. I don't care much about the Ethereum Foundation selling. I just all of it is noise. All that matters is on Friday, did you get more money? Great, prosperity. On Friday, if you got less money, austerity. Over time, you'll make more money sometimes. Over time, you'll make less money sometimes. That's all that matters. Higher lows and higher highs. Honey's a stable backed by, is it like a synthetic liability? CRVUSD? Is it dollar? Is it collateralized? Collateralized by what? Is it an OFT standard? Is it plugged into Stargate? Not interested. Is what it is. Bex meant as swap as last resort. Yeah, I'm just not. I'm sorry. I'm just not the real DEX. Let's take a look. Go over the volume, Parachain, Zodiac. Oh my God, terms and conditions. All right, liquidity. It's just liquidity. It's literally just a DEX. But there's nothing here. It's literally what? Is this a V3 or V2 Uniswap fork? Mm-mm. Why not own it on mainnet or base or something? I don't know. I just no interest in. I just have no interest. It is what it is. X33 is how you enter shadow at a discount. So sorry, connected dots. That's just my 2 cents. I'm too old and I don't care about new. Give it 6 months. Give it a year. And watch it appreciates 10 times from here. And I'm like, all right, fine. Now it's interesting. I don't give a shit if it appreciates 10 times. What I care about is where it fits into the big picture. And it needs to conform with my methodology. It needs to meet my understanding of things. And that means the price is irrelevant. If Barradrom's cranking out 30% APR after everything settles down, and things get diluted and whatnot, 30% is 30% is 30%. So why would I want to own 30% on Barradrome versus Optimism or Base or Arbitrum or what have you? Rather own something more mainstream. Mainstream. anything in crypto as mainstream. That's a heck of a statement, isn't it? X33 is how you enter shadow at discount, exit without taking a 50% haircut. Yeah, depending on liquidity availability. Simple as that. With all the cut is maxed at 50%. Yeah, needs liquidity though. Can you inspect the metrics in XYZ terms regarding possible investment in Pancake Swap? Okay, we can do that. Let's pull up the user interface so I can get some sentiment. Good old BSC. Where? By Llama. Binance Smart Chain. No, I don't want stables. We'll go to volume. Nope, stop it. Oh shit, get the fuck out of here. No way. No, it's base. That's what I thought. Jones on BSC? No, Pancake Swap is dominant. And let's look at, I want to look at Avalanche for a second. Yes. So LFJ, Trader Joe used to be dominant on Avalanche, and now Faro is just really creeping up. That's crazy to see. But Binance Smart Chain Pancake Swap has always been dominant. Not that Thana's significantly second by 2x on top of Uniswap. Very interesting to see. Uniswap has been top on so many chains considering V33s. That's crazy, but it's nowhere near Pancake. Um, I would lean on V33s nowadays. It's just my 2 cents. I have Thana exposure. So earn, I don't care about LPs. Cake staking? Up to. Up to. What's the damn APR? Oh, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about any of that. Need a historic. What's the damn APR? What is this up to? Yeah, shit. What? Okay, fine. Up to 25%. Guess what? 25% is 25% is 25%. Binance Smart Chain is on the defensive. Inferior tech thus far compared to any L2 EVM. So it comes out of the gate with fresh update and it pulls a Sonic. Frankly, I'd rather be exposed to Sonic than a Binance Smart Chain. I think Andre has more sway than Binance has nowadays. They're just too under the microscope of sovereign regulators. No interest. But XYZ remains constant. Not that. I'm going clicking everything at this point. Wait, let's go back here. Ah, XYZ remains constant. How much does it cost? How much is it paying? And how likely is it to continue to pay? Z, highly likely to continue to pay. How much does it cost? You'd have to look at the chart for that. We'll digress for 2 seconds. Paying 25%. You know what this chart looks like? It looks like every damn V33 DEX. Big bump in volume. It's not horribly priced. Is this all-time highs? $5. Market cap 683 mil. Aerodrome territory. I'd rather own Thana. It's my 2 cents. No interest in cake. Is what it is. 0x. Good morning, Cap. Much a pleasure. I tuned in a bit late. Just heard the question. Do you own the amount of Bitcoin you want? Yeah. Am I disappointed? Do I? No. Folks dwell on points. And they second guess everything. I'm content. That's the hardest thing to be. Most people are always like, "Oh, what do I do? I have to make a trade. I'm missing out. And they want more." When you gotta find comfort. You got to be content with what you've done and what you have. The market sets the prices. The market will dictate what your portfolio is worth in the future, not you or your actions. Even if you get the timing right, it's still governed by the markets, but it's governed by the market. So, just my 2 cents. Hope it helps. One of the best goals I've heard to attempt to answer the question is to accumulate 1 block worth of Bitcoin. That's a lot of Bitcoin. What are we at? Seven and change? Great. What's the current? Here we go. 3.125. I wasn't even close. 1 block reward, or whatever the previous block was. So what are you saying? 3 to 6 Bitcoin? That's a lot of Bitcoin. 3 to 6 Bitcoin is, 300 grand to 600. That's a lot. Um, if that, what matters is if that'll make you happy. For instance, if you own 3 to 6 Bitcoin, do you have enough capital to actually own investments? Because I don't define Bitcoin as an investment. Investments produce revenue. Revenue pays for life. Um, the- so if you have that kind of financial capacity to diversify like that, all right, more power to folks. It's everyone's individual subjective requirement to define what is the amount of Bitcoin. Never go all in, never spread too thin. That's something old school we used to talk about. I sure as hell wouldn't be comfortable just owning Bitcoin. Like, you need both. You need collateral and you need cash flow. Yeah, that's why Warren Buffett owns all these productive businesses. That's why he just doesn't own gold. In fact, he doesn't really own much gold at all, relatively speaking. But look here. Here's the takeaway, everyone. That's his current goal. That is a good goal. You've set a number. Adjust that number, change that number, but have a number. And then you could adjust based on conditions. You could adjust based on changes in rules. Write down your rules, everyone, and stick to them and adjust them methodically. But we've talked plenty about shadow. I like shadow, my friend. Yes, indeed. Minimizing your risk of ruin is always top priority. That's correct. Everything is about risk management. So when you're allocating to risk, you want to appropriately size it. Which is why, for me, curve's the lowest risk. It's immutable. It's going to exist in 2030. It's going to exist in 2032. It's just going to be there. And it's got how much capital in deposit. So it's still used to this day. It's the second highest volume exchange on mainnet. And it has all the 5 fintech verticals. It's exactly the risk adjusted exposure I would want for the core of my portfolio. Tape pusher, if you were a Bitcoin maxi, you would be acquiring and holding only cash. Yeah, exactly. So what do you do on Friday? I don't want to spend my Bitcoin. All right, great. That means I need to make money some way else. Okay, so we don't want to invalidate or ignore purchase salary as a concept. All right, so what do you buy? All right, so Bitcoin's not part of that equation. It's not mutually exclusive. It's Bitcoin or other stuff. We're robust. We create rich portfolios filled with collateral and cash flow, properties. It's all property. That's another story. So that's the point. How do you pay for Friday? How do you pay your bills? How do you pay the mortgage? So on and so forth. Cash flow. Can't do that with Bitcoin. Can't do that with cash. Can't do that with collateral. And we're not going to talk about borrowing 3% against Bitcoin every year and finagling debt against, he who has Bitcoin does not borrow against Bitcoin, albeit I got some Bitcoin in Aave, so what the hell am I talking about? If you were willing to take the risk on top of holding Bitcoin as your backbone, yeah, It's not just about fun, it's about a well-structured, productive portfolio that's capable of fulfilling what you need. There's meaning to collateral. There's meaning to Bitcoin from a maximalist standpoint. Sovereign, sovereign money. Confiscation resistant. It's portable. Just it's Bitcoin. Meaningful. And then the other stuff is fintech. Business is meaningful. Human beings operate and could create businesses to interact with. Business is meaningful. It's just a different story. Both meaningful in their own right. Would you consider other VE33 positions on Sonic that offer locking? No, not right now. I have exposure to Solidly, but very unfortunately, they are underperforming significantly after all these years of work that they put in, and the fact that it's an OFT implementation using Chainlink. No one else has done anything with Chainlink. I mean, Vote Market did something with Chainlink, but I mean, Sonic literally has full OFT implementation and Chainlink uh, and Axelar. What the fuck? So I mean, Solidly literally is pretty crazy from a cross-chain implementation. It is what it is. Greatest tech isn't always the greatest investment. Anything in discount to buy now? Not from my standpoint. I don't. I am done buying, and that is my opinion, and that is my position. I will look to buy likely. I need to see complete panic and desperation. 2026, some sort of financial collapse. You see Bitcoin fall from 150,000 to 90,000 in 2 hours. Okay, now we're starting to talk. And that's probably like a Q4 22 type of inspection, which ultimately means you got some time between the bottom in the crypto fintech space. If Bitcoin bottomed in Q4 of 22, crypto fintech bottomed in Q4 2024, 2 years later. So that's just something that's probably my biggest takeaway from this past cycle. That's my biggest takeaway. Bitcoin dominance. You could have still waited to this day. I mean, you could have if you didn't catch bottom in November of 24 and much of the crypto space, much of the crypto fintech space. Now is why now is construct. This is the most insane wick we've seen in how many years? January 2021. You know what happened in January of 2021? The start of an absolutely ferocious structural bull market from a dollar perspective. And here's a hell of a wick. So you might not have caught 20 cents on curve, but look, 47 cents. You wait for a constructive setup. 2 years, uh, over 2 years at this point, since Bitcoin bottomed in 2022. Uh, I have some very high time frame takeaways heading into 2030. Altcoins do not bottom when Bitcoin bottoms. Follow Bitcoin dominance. And because I don't want to over own Bitcoin, it means if I have cash, I'm not buying Bitcoin because it's going up. I buy Bitcoin because I want a particular quantity and I've already attained my particular quantity. So I don't give a shit if it's down and it's going up. I'm not buying it. I would rather invest if I'm going to invest or not invest because I want the cash. So then I'm looking at Bitcoin dominance to see maybe when there's a topping pattern, let's say in 2027, 2028, show me a blow off top, show me a shooting star candle, show me breath collapse. In some regards, it is. I go, yeah, there's a big breath collapse between November of 2024 and now. It's completely flat. That's breath collapse by any inspection. Um, that's my 2 cents there. Um, Last question. We're going to wrap it up for today. Adam's in the house. How are you, my friend? Hey, Noah. Shadow is wild. 0% to 27%. Largest position. Rational to keep blocking rebases or exit, vest, and rebalance. If you need the money, take the money. I mean, literally, if you got a $200,000 airdrop and you could sell it at the click of a button for $100,000, and you need it, take it. Um, if you don't, I mean, clearly that's a position like myself. I don't need it. I want it, but I don't need it. Like if you have a mortgage or a debt, and you could literally help yourself do better in real life. Don't forget you got this income tax associated, or capital gains rather. So that's a consideration. What's the tax rate? So that plays into the take it question. But if you need it, take it. I'm not. I don't need it. It goes to zero. 2 weeks ago, I didn't have it. So whatever the cash flow it produces is just added on, just extra. So I'm like, all right, thank you. So I consider my portfolio worthless from a fair market value standpoint. Literally nothing in my portfolio can be sold under reasonable conditions. It's a completely illiquid portfolio. Therefore, it has no value. The only thing significant about the portfolio is the amount of revenue it generates. That's it. There's nothing else. So you go to like a D bank or whatever your inspection is of your portfolio. I don't care what the number is. It might as well be zero or the cash component of the portfolio. If I got 20 grand, I got 20 grand. This is what it is. Pulling 4 grand next week. All right, I got four. But the value of the assets are meaningless if they cannot be sold. They have a $0 fair market value. Dean, that Bitcoin dominance statement is also my biggest takeaway, right? Definitely, we're going to do better next time. In hindsight, I'm quite satisfied. I could have bought cheaper in 23 and 24. Could have waited till 24 for the 23 buys. And that's okay. I don't give a shit about making as much money as possible. What I care about is having rules, refining those rules, doing better next time. And that's it. That's my measure of success. And in that regard, hindsight 2022, 23, and 24, all right, fine. Did pretty good. I shouldn't complain at all. I bought a lot of things that went down in value, and now they're going back up. And in the future, they will be worth more than what I bought them for in 22, 23, and 24. And in the meantime, all right, what we do? I could have bought them cheaper. Am I going to hate myself forever for making those choices or better understand them and really appreciate Bitcoin dominance and how powerful it was? And maybe that narrative changes. But what's pertinent is it shouldn't change dramatically. It shouldn't, but it can. We set up these rules like, oh, altcoins bottomed 2 years after Bitcoin. That doesn't mean it has to happen again like that. Well, narrative could change. All it takes is one geopolitical deal or nation state to change the entire equation. So always be ready to pivot, be agile, so to speak, a software industry term, because what you may think is going to be status quo, like, oh, we got to look at Bitcoin dominance going forward, may very well end up not being as entirely relevant as we're thinking right now. Isn't that interesting? Our takeaway was hmm, altcoins don't bottom when Bitcoin bottoms, took 2 years. And our takeaway now is that's not guaranteed to be the way it plays out in the future. So we shouldn't set that as some sort of fixture or signpost of how to behave in the future. No certainty of that. So, what are the rules that survive those types of certainties? Those are the best rules. One, own more assets. That's a simple one. Two, know when to stop buying assets cyclically. Three, balanced portfolio, cash and investments. Bitcoin isn't an investment, it's a form of cash, a collateralizable cash. Don't overown Bitcoin. Focus on cash flow. Cash flow fits into the human condition. Humans operate on cash. If you have a lump sum, some sort of big win in crypto and you make like a couple mil. The first thing you're thinking to yourself is, all right, I got a couple mil. What the hell am I going to do with a couple mil? I don't want that. Nobody should want that. That is a burden. Now you have to think through, what am I going to do with it? And that's not consume, because if you consume it, it goes bye bye. What you want to do is take capital so capital makes capital. So that is a lot of responsibility. Therefore, for that reason and that reason alone, I don't want to have as much money as possible. What I want to have is as much cash flow as possible, because that is how humans win their life, or that's how humans operate psychologically. Think of lottery winners. They spend all their money. The dumb dumbs spend all their money and it's gone. Cash flow you could bank on. You could operate sustainably. You could live a reasonable life. Cash flow above all else. Cash flow brings sanity. Monday, February 24th at 12:52 p.m. Thank you everyone for joining me today. 308 people made it to the end of the stream and are that much more rational because of it. It's only Monday, so we'll be back on Wednesday. So stay rational until then, and I will see you later this week. Peace.